Good afternoon. Good morning. Good afternoon. Happy day 57.
It is still morning.
Okay. I hereby call this the sixth meeting and the final meeting of the House Standing Committee on Families and Children to order. Please silence your cell phones so they do not cause a disruption during the meeting. Secretary, please call the roll.
Representative Baker, Representative Kleins, Representative Decker, Representative Dietz, Representative Elliott, Representative Fleming, Representative Gooch, Representative Proctor, Representative Rayburn,
Here.
Representative Raymond, Representative Rorks,
Here.
Representative Wilner,
Here.
Representative Wilson,
Here.
Vice Chair Riley,
Here.
Chair Heverin.
Here. Okay, so the only bill we will hear today is Senate Bill 242. Senator Carroll, you have made your way to the testimony table. Please introduce yourself for the record. I will let all of your guests introduce themselves as well, and then I will make a motion to adopt the House Committee substitute.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm Danny Carroll, the State Senator from the 2nd District.
Good morning. I'm Nancy Galvani, President of Kentucky Hospital Association.
I'm Keith Jackson, Secretary of Justice and Public Safety.
And I'm Eric Friedlander, Secretary of the Cabinet for Health and Family Services.
Motion on sub.
We've got a motion on the substitute, which will be proposed House Committee Substitute 2. Do I have a second? Second by Representative Wilson. All in favor say aye. Any opposed? The House Committee Substitute 2 is adopted. Please move forward with your testimony.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. This bill is a follow-through with the Juvenile Justice Working Group that we had last session. If you all remember, Senate Bill 162 and House Bill 3 were the products of that group. This bill primarily focuses on the acute, those youth who are acute mentally ill, the most violent youth, and it addresses the issues that we've all heard about, that we've all talked about, that are currently occurring within DJJ detention facilities. And I apologize for this bill coming out so late in the session. We have worked on it during the session to try to get everything as clean as we possibly could. And this is very much a collaborative effort. Cabinet for Health and Family Services, the Justice Cabinet, Administrative Office of Courts, and the Kentucky Hospital Association all had equal input in this, and I think we've come up with a very good product and a solution to some very pressing issues in this Commonwealth. I'm going to go through the first section of the bill is the most detailed, and I'm just going to hit on some high points. And the first thing I want to do is just kind of touch on the committee sub on the changes, because I think a couple of these changes will answer questions that you're going to have. There are a couple phrases that have been changed in two different places in the bill. The two most pressing changes was on page 32, beginning after line 23. We deleted subsection 15 that contained a provision regarding a waiver of confidentiality. This was in the case of civil suits. There is similar language, I think, that covers those children who are committed to the cabinet that allows this, and this was just mirroring that language. However, there was some pushback on this, so we decided to go ahead and delete that provision from the bill. Also on page 48 of the sub, we broke down 630-160 to make it easier to read and provide that if a child walks away without permission from a DJJ facility, they can be charged with escape. If they are homebound or have other monitored placement that's not in a facility, they cannot be charged with escape under those circumstances. So I think this is very fitting and a very good balance that we're reaching with this. Getting on into section 1 of the bill, this basically establishes a process for those kids that come in to the DJJ system who or possibly appear to be acutely mentally ill, violent. It set up a process for those kids to be assessed and then be placed. And it's a very standardized process that works in all different areas. If there is a need, let's say an acute mentally ill kid has been placed in a hospital, and that kid becomes too violent to be there. It's assaulted staff. It creates the same process will allow that kid to be charged and then become DJJ committed and moved to a facility. So understand that deals with that process, and it standardizes. It involves the Department of Behavioral Health, Developmental and Intellectual Disabilities, DJJ, and the hospitals with this process. And through this process, there are assessments done, affidavits are turned over to the judge, and the judge makes the final decision, which is as it should be. And it is provisions that, they can, all three can join together on an affidavit, or they can provide separate affidavits if they disagree with the assessment. So, a lot of work put into that to get that process perfected, and we feel like it's a good product. As I said, one of the greatest issues that we've had within our hospitals, and when I say hospitals, I'm talking about an inpatient psychiatric hospital or a pediatric teaching hospital. And these are the hospitals that treat these acutely mentally ill youth. And the problems we've had that we found out during meetings was that once these kids were brought to these hospitals, there was no way to move these kids out. So if they were becoming violent, if they were assaulting staff, these facilities were stuck and nothing they could do. Law enforcement would not take them. So we addressed this through cleaning up some language and then setting up this process whereby they do have the ability to move those kids on to the proper facility. And that's all I'm going to touch on as far as that goes. I do want to also state that as part of Section 1, it establishes a fee schedule for these kids in these hospitals, that it's at no less than 200% of the current Medicaid rate, and the outpatient rate for services provided by these hospitals no less than 150% of the current inpatient Medicaid rate. There are also some reporting requirements established. It establishes that these hospitals are not required to take high acuity youth should that be in violation of federal law, where the services are not really matched to what their needs are. And Nancy may want to expand on that a little bit, but it sets up to ensure that doesn't happen. In Section 2 of the bill, it allows DJJ to determine the appropriate level of security for each facility, and this is getting on outside of the acute mental illness issues that we addressed in Section 1. It requires that by February 1st, 2026, that DJJ shall be operating at least 2 female-only detention facilities for female offenders and shall segregate violent from nonviolent offenders. If you all remember in Senate Bill 162, we required DJJ to separate male, female, violent, nonviolent. Through some studies that the cabinet did, they came to the conclusion that it's not fiscally feasible to do this. And they looked at the numbers from throughout the state where these females are coming from, and the proposal was made to build 2 female detention centers, one of those being in the central Kentucky area, Fayette County area, and one being in western Kentucky. And there were some members of our working group that had some concerns about that. They wanted their females to be closer to home. So we worked out a compromise on that, and there is language in here that should these 2 facilities reach their capacity and there's a need for a 3rd facility, we will reassess the numbers, and that 3rd facility would either be built in eastern Kentucky or northern Kentucky based on what the numbers show. And that was kind of the compromise that we came to with this. The plan for us to put the females back into the regional centers, there was already budget request for retrofitting of these facilities to make sure that they could safely segregate the violent and nonviolent males in these detention centers. And so the cost, it was just not feasible to do that from the research that the Justice Cabinet did. And then that's when the proposal came forward to build these 2 female centers. Looking at the numbers, it makes perfect sense to do that. And I think in the long run, probably a better investment for the state, not to mention a safer investment for the state. So that's part of what we have in Section 2. And it also restates the requirement to go back to the regional detention center model by February 1st, 2026. It addresses per diem charge to local government agencies to house youth, and that will be set by administrative reg. And then finally in Section 2, it allows DCBS to contract with one or more inpatient psychiatric hospitals or pediatric teaching hospitals or other behavioral health providers to provide outpatient services to children needing these services while in a detention center. In Section 3, just a couple definitions on an alternate to detention center and a group home. Section 4, it resets the effective date of a provision of House Bill 3 from last session. And this was the provision that basically was the automatic 48-hour detention of a violent offender from House Bill 3. And we reset this date to February 1st, 2026. And the reason for this is to give time to get the regional centers retrofitted, especially the Jefferson County Center, to make sure that we're going to have more youth coming into the system, to make sure that we're not having to disperse them throughout the state again. And that's the delay, and that's why that we're doing this in the legislation.
We already have a motion on the sub, but I can accept a motion on Senate Bill 242 as amended by House Committee Substitute 2. All right, we've got a motion and a second. Okay, I'm going to open it up for a few questions.
Madam Chair, may I add there's one other critical component that I want to make you all aware of. We propose in this piece of legislation to build an acute mental health detention center within DJJ. It is a new idea from what I understand. There is not anything like that being done in the country, but it's something that we came up with for these kids that are the most acute. And you all remember the female that we've talked about that was in a detention center and in deplorable conditions. For kids like her, that's where they will be housed. And the focus will be on mental health treatment. DJJ will own the facility, and they will staff the security side of the facility, but it will be a collaborative work with the cabinet as they provide the mental health services. So that's something that is very critical component to this legislation, and really I think is the answer to that problem, to that crisis that we have currently in this Commonwealth is that facility. And we're pretty excited about that, and we feel like it's a great idea, and a lot of time and effort has gone into kind of working out the details on how this would be established. And we hope to build this facility on the property at Central State Hospital, and then hope to contract with university to be able to provide the services there. It will, from what we understand, Medicaid will cover the services for the youth that are there. And so cutting edge ideas, and that's really why this process has taken so long, because we have talked through a lot of different ideas and looked at different avenues to resolve this crisis. And, this is what government's all about, the executive branch, the legislative branch, and the judicial branch. With Katie, it's worked, and we feel like we have an excellent product that's going to solve some major problems in this Commonwealth.
Thank you. I'm going to kick us off with a question, and then I know that we've got another committee member that has questions. On page 4 of House Committee Substitute 2, it talks about if a high acuity youth commits an act of violence against any of the department. Is that defined anywhere of what an act of violence is?
It would be something that would be considered an assault, something that they would be able to be charged with.
So it's not going to be a situation where, say somebody has a behavioral disorder and they hit somebody, they're not automatically going to be sent to DJJ. There is a
It would be that if it is an emergency issue where the violence has reached a scale to where numerous people have been assaulted, where the child could be moved at that time. However, if it's kind of not to that level, then that process would kick in where that hospital would prepare an affidavit, send it to the judge, contact the other two agencies involved with DJJ. And then the affidavits would be submitted to the judge, and the judge would make that decision. So that's kind of the process in how no one entity is making the decision. It's the judge. So the hospital can't just say, we don't want to keep this kid any longer. The judge will be making that final decision. Even when it comes to de-escalation of the services, if they need to step down in the continuum of care, that same process would be utilized, and the judge would make that decision. So I think it's a fairly foolproof process that takes all the doubt out of it, and it puts it all on the judge. But the judge has all the information that he or she needs to make a truly informed decision coming from all of those who are involved, DJJ, the hospitals, the cabinet. So
Thank you for that clarification. I think as we talk about this, it's really, I know you've worked diligently on this. All of you have. I think I've had separate conversations probably with some of you too. I think it's a really important conversation to have. What I don't want us to forget is that they are youth. And even if they're very violent, they're still youth. And so making sure that we don't decide their future for them at 18 because they've not made some good decisions. And so I appreciate the foolproof system that you have created through this legislation. But I just, I think it's important to note that we do want to see kids have a second chance and be able to, continue that. So I believe Representative Wilner has a question.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I really just want to comment and offer appreciation to you, Senator. I was on the DJJ work group with you last year, and we kept bumping up against this issue of the high acuity youth and where they should go. And the answer was there was no place. There was absolutely no place. And so it's very heartening to me to see health and justice and hospitals all at the table with you. We have these silos because, these are big organizations, and to break down those silos and to do this work is really important. And Secretary Friedlander, you and I have had several conversations about this. But Senator Carroll, I just really appreciate your leadership for getting these groups together and coming up with this bill. I also want to thank you. There was one of the sections that you removed from the bill. I was getting a lot of interest in that, and I appreciate your willingness, this late in the session, to be willing to drop a piece that was, causing a lot of heartburn for folks, and I think, could have potentially been a real problem. So thank you for your flexibility. Thank you for your leadership, and I'll be supporting this wholeheartedly.
thank you.
Representative Fleming.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I realize this is a heavy lift, and I appreciate, as Representative Wilner said, your due diligence and going through and really putting forth an effort to help our kids. Two real quick questions. It might be in here, Senator, but could you you mentioned about the transportation. How's that going to be arranged, or when they transport the individuals from one location to another location?
It would be as it is now. As it is now, when a kid comes in through DJJ, the CDW, there is a metrics program that they do for a basic evaluation, and then they contact a mental health professional locally, and they make the determination whether or not that child might be a high acuity youth. And with this process, at that point, they would contact the hospital. Okay. There would be a more thorough assessment done. Once the decision is made where that child will go, then it will be up to the law enforcement would transport that child just as they do now. And even between, let's say that a child is in a hospital and becomes violent, assaulting staff, they end up putting an assault charge on that petition on that child, then that child will be transported back to the originating facility unless there is a court order to transport. Let's say once the mental health facility is built and that's where that child needs to go, then there is a possibility that child would go from the hospital to that DJJ mental health facility.
Okay, great. I appreciate the explanation. One more question, Senator. That is, I know this is not
You can
appropriation.
ask another question.
Thank you, ma'am. Another question, Madam Chair. Thank you, ma'am. Stand corrected by the chair. I yield to the chair. With her permission, I'll ask one more question.
You have received permission.
Thank you,
know, it's
ma'am.
the last days of session. We get sloppy around here. Got to bring it back to the chair.
Senator, you mentioned made a couple of comments about building facilities and so forth. Could you, and I haven't gone through all the budget and it's constantly fluid. Is there anything in this budget to help accomplish that? And if not, what do you see down the road?
I can say from what I knew from the Senate's proposal that there was funding in that budget for the 2 female facilities, and that was about $45 million for each facility. And the request for the retrofits based on having the 2 female facilities, that was also in the budget. And then as far as the mental health facility, I think there was $5 million of a $22 million request that was part of that budget. Now, what the final product's going to be, I don't know. What I do know is how critical this is, and I do know that if we decide not to fund the female facilities, then the numbers that the cabinet provided to retrofit all of the regional facilities, that number's out the door, out the window, because then we're going to have to go back and consider being able to house females at every one of those regional facilities, which I feel certain that if we decide to do that, that cost is going to be far more than the $90 million projected for the 2 female facilities. And with the mental health facility, that's something that's just got to happen. If we don't do that now, it's going to be at least 4 years before we're able to get these kids out of detention facilities. And that's, in my mind, you all know what I know, that's unacceptable. So those are the numbers that we're looking at right now. But again, I'm not sure what the final budget is.
Well, thank you, Senator. Thank you, Madam Chair. I do appreciate your assertiveness in terms of trying to find out and secure some funding for because you're spot on. So thank you.
Thank you. One final question, just because of time is of the essence. If this weren't to be passed the House floor by tomorrow, is this something that the governor will support and sign off on? He won't veto it. I'm looking at the secretaries.
And I see the looks on their faces.
Yeah.
I do not pretend to speak for the governor, but we've kept everybody informed the whole way through.
Yeah, 100% with the governor. I mean, we can't speak for him, but we've done a lot of work with the governor's office to ensure that this is moved forward.
All right. Thank you. Clerk, we have a motion and a second. Will you please call the roll?
Representative Baker? Yes. Representative Kleins? Yes. Representative Decker?
Yes.
Representative Dietz?
Yes.
Representative Elliott? Representative Fleming? Representative Gooch? Representative Proctor? Yes. Representative Rayburn?
Yes.
Representative Raymond? Representative Riley?
Yes.
Representative Rourke?
Yes.
Representative Wilner?
Yes.
Representative Wilson?
Yes.
Chair Hebron?
Yes. The bill passes with favorable expression. 13 yes votes, 0 nay votes. It should do so on the House floor. Thank you all for your hard work on this.
Madam Chair, I'd like to recognize Roberta Kaiser and Randall Roof, and I don't think Roberta's here, but she
Yes.
has carried the load on this, and I know she has more than had her plate full this session, but she has been there every step of the way, and I cannot express enough how much I appreciate her and Randall both for their work on this. And again, all of us who work together on this, just a great experience and a problem, a crisis, and we have an answer for it. And now it's up to the legislature to ensure that that answer is put in motion. Thank you.
Thank
you all
you.
very much.
Thank you all. Motion for adjournment?
Motion adjourned.
We are adjourned.